Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us on this 14th and last game production masterclass lecture. Today with us is Primož Strajnar, CEO of Tricky Tribe, and he will be talking about publishing. But before we go into that and more into details about that, I will just do, as always, I'll just thank our partners and sponsors, and I will also say how this lecture will look like. So our partners on this project were and are still Center for Creativity, who co-produce this masterclass with the funds from European Union and Republic of Slovenia. And we have our partners Outfit 7 and Triternion, which are one of the biggest companies in Slovenia. And one of the organizers for this project were Reveris and Slovenia Games. Before I will go into the details how this lecture will look like, as I mentioned, this will be the last lecture, and in 2 weeks' time, on 14th of July, we will have a final event, a closing event. I will post more details soon. It will be an open event for everybody to join, but all of the top participants who posted their homeworks will get to present their ideas and their dream role. And there will also be time for mingling and networking. There will be some free food and free drinks, and some finger food and some beers. And it will be all in all, you can get to know all of the local community that didn't get around for 2 years now. If you want, come. It will be in the Tralniški Muzej, which is on Celovška Cesta, and we will happy to welcome you. That's about the official part, and thank you all for who stayed until the last one. And now I will speak shortly about Primož. He's a CEO and co-founder of Tricky Tribe. It's a small mobile game studio in Ljubljana. Previously it was in Kranj, and before that Primož was on Outfit 7. And that's a short history about him. He will talk more about himself later in the presentation. And today he'll be talking about publishing. How do you talk to publishers, investors, VC funds? How do you prepare pitch? How do you prepare pitch slides, and so on? And without further ado, Primož, take it away.
Thanks, Rok. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite. And congratulations to everyone who made it to the last masterclass. I was not in the games industry before. I was a gamer, but more on Super Nintendo and so on. But it's a really fun industry. I was in medical industry before and in food vending, and games are fun, guys. But tough as well. So I'll be talking about how to raise money and what to do with it, or how to get partners once you have, in different stages, but let's say once you have a game or at least a concept or a team ready. As you know, just click here. As you know, ever since COVID started, the mobile games and games in general have grown. The investments there have grown. Microsoft bought companies, and Zynga bought companies, and there were 4 billion investments just in 2021, and it's still big. It's slowing down a little bit. So there's a lot of money going around. There's a lot of investors who would have otherwise invested into something else, invested into games, because you could play games uninterruptedly during COVID, and people did that, and it was the biggest years in the history of games in the industry. So the question is, how do you guys get a share of that money going around that investors and publishers need to and want to invest into new projects? So basically, this money is going around. How do you get a part of it? That's what I'll try to explain. It's a very wide topic, and it varies very a lot between whether it's a mobile game, whether it's a premium game, where you want to publish, what you're looking for, in what stage of development you are, and so on. So it will be a very wide topic, and I will not be able to answer all the questions that you may have. I spoke with Rok before this call to get a better understanding of where you guys are, what you guys are actually doing, so that I may be as relevant as possible to what you guys are working on. So who I am. So my background is business school. So I'm an economist by profession. I worked at Outfit 7. I was there at first in e-commerce, and then moved into cross promotion and publishing, third-party publishing, and so UA, user acquisition and promotion, and also did some economy design in the early days of more serious games back there at Outfit 7. And then we started Tricky Tribe in 2015, late 2015, and published our first game in 2016, the game Tinker Island. So this game it's a free-to-play mobile game, pixel art, narrative game with resource management, and we published it with Kongregate. It's a Kongregate.com. You probably are aware of it. It's a San Francisco company. That was a big publisher back in the day. It's now changed hands, so it's been acquired 2 times since we started working with them. And we published another game, ASMR Slicing, a hyper casual game. We published that with Crazy Labs, which is an Israeli company. It's a mobile games publisher with over 5 billion installs until now. And we self-published Tinker Island 2 this year. We self-published Journey Jake a few years ago, and it flopped. Tinker Island 2 is doing decent, not as good as we hope. And we also took back from the publisher, Kongregate, we took back Tinker Island 1 in 2020. So we moved it to our account, and we're publishing it ourselves now. All right. So who is who in investments and in who can help you get development money or money in general or publishing in this process of building your game? So the first stage, the first people who can help you are family, friends, and fools, the so-called triple F, FFF. So family, your dad gives you money to live, whatever they have. They say there's no contract usually signed, or some friends invest in you, or some fools usually who have no idea what you're doing or whether you're going to make it or not. But they like you, or you're their relative, and some think they're missing out an opportunity. And especially in Europe, and if you're not doing this on a high level, this is where you usually raise some money, or you live in your parents' basement, and that's kind of an investment of theirs for you. So then, let's say the second stage are angel investors. These are, in gaming industry, these are usually well-known people who have made it in the past, who have made a great game, so maybe sold their company or whatever, maybe some CEO or some top-level exec at some company. And basically, instead of them buying expensive toys or cars or Birkin bags, they prefer to invest into cool people that they maybe worked with, and they give you a small investment. We will look at each one of them, especially these last ones, more in detail. There are venture funds or venture capital. These are organizations where wealthy individuals put in their money, let's say in hundreds of thousands or in the millions. Banks put in their money, pension funds and whoever, they put in their money into a fund, and then an experienced manager from the games industry, usually people who like numbers and who know a lot of people in the games industry who have been around for a while, they are employed by this fund, and their job is to to go around and maybe in 5 years to spend all the money that they have gathered from all these investors and put it in the companies that they think will perform the best in the games industry over the next 5 to 10 years, let's say. So after 5 to 10 years, they want you to sell the company so that the investors get their money back. And then there are publishers, so companies who publish games for you. So you give them the game in a sense, and they publish it on different platforms because they know some stuff you don't know. They know how to do marketing, PR. They know how to do these things, and they fund you usually very often. And then and these are big companies who do this for a living, so they're also actively looking out for new games all the time. And then there's self-publishing, or where you publish the game yourself and you run it. So we have these guys on the left side of the screen now. So family, friends, and fools, angel investors, and so on. And on the right side, as a disclaimer, on the very far right, the column titled "Do I know what I'm talking about?" meaning me, Primož, do I know what I'm talking about? Friends, family, fools, and getting money from them is relatively easy. They either give it to you or they don't. You have to ask them, and you're their kid, and they give you the money. So I kind of know what I'm talking about. I didn't get a lot of money through FFF, but let's say, yeah, that's the easy part. Then there are angels, where I also don't have direct experience. I never got an investment from an angel investor. And the difficulty here of getting money from an angel investment very much depends on whether you actually personally know this person or not. These are, like I said, these famous individuals, and either they know you from before, they know the company you worked for, and they ask around whether you're a good guy or not, and they give you like $5,000 to $10,000, maybe 20, maybe 15, whatever, not a lot. And then the next level is VC, so venture capital. The difficulty of getting money from there also heavily depends on a couple of things. Mostly in early investments, like when you start out, it pretty much depends on where you worked before, who the co-founders are, and where your general strategy is. But in this early, and who your angel investments are. But in the games industry, like 50% of the VC funds, they just check who your angel investors were. They check with your ex-bosses if you're any good, and if they know you, even better. And if they get this social proof of you being someone in the industry, they're happy to invest in you at a very early stage. At a later stage, you need to show something. You either need to show a working prototype, which doesn't get you very far these days, but much better is stats. So KPIs of your game, KPIs of your promotion campaign. If you have a premium game, how much traction you have, how many Instagram or Twitter or whatever followers you have, how big is your Discord channel. And based on those numbers, they would then invest in you to further develop the game once you already have some traction. I have done a bit of that. So I have walked around London asking VCs to invest. I've pitched them. I got meetings with them, but then we signed a publishing deal. So for the publishers, I would say the difficulty is, so easy, hard, can't really say, but it really depends even more than with venture capital. Well, similar to venture capital, who you are, what have you done in your life before, even more, what are your stats, if it's premium game, Discord channel, Instagram, whatever else you have, how many followers there. And then for mobile games, it's purely, nowadays it's almost purely just whether just your KPIs. So your day one retention, your cost per installs, your daily session lengths, your day 30 retention, and so on. And yes, I have signed 2 of those, well, even more deals, but some never came to fruition or sucked, like Chinese publishing. But yeah, we signed 2 of those deals, and both of them helped us a lot as a company to grow. And then the last part is self-publishing, which I can, in terms of difficulty, only say it's hard because you have to do everything yourself. So you have to have the experience, you have to have the people to do it. And yes, we have published a couple of games ourselves. One of them, 2 big ones, one of them unsuccessfully, and one of them successfully. But it's still small in many ways. You can measure games, not that big. So just why I started with this slide. So you take a look again now on the right side of the screen, and just remember that I only have first-hand experience in mobile games with publishers, a bit of VC, and self-publishing. And I've only read or spoke with people about premium titles on PC or console or web. So it's a much different beast, and I will tell you what I know, what I think, but not first-hand experience and not up to date, because over the last 2 years I didn't meet a lot of people and talked with them about how it's going on that side of the industry, because we didn't meet on any events. So when is the best time to publish any of these guys? Be it angel investors or publishers or whatever. It depends, and I don't have a straight answer for you. But you need to give them what they need. So you're not, if you have a working console game that you just need someone to publish it for you, you don't go barking up the wrong tree like an angel investor. They don't care about that. They're going to give you $15,000 as an investment, and they only care about you raising more money in the future and making it big, so their $15,000 can become something much bigger. And if it's already done, that's usually not interesting for them. Same with well, not same, but with VC funds. With venture capital, you don't go there with a premium console title, because you just have to publish it, do the marketing, do the PR, maybe complete the title, but it's an old industry, quite predictable, and it's hard to scale beyond a certain point, and it's simply not that interesting for venture capital. So if you have a premium console game almost ready, or you need some money to complete it, you would go to a publisher, or you would think about self-publishing it. Investors, at least institutional investors, they're not that interested in something like this, because it's not gonna grow like 20 or 30 times in value, usually, because it's already done, and it is what it is. Of course, you can also find these people as well, that would invest in you in those cases, but it's just not that common. So when you have to realize what you have and go to the right person on that, let's say, value chain, or who is looking, they're all, keep in mind always that none of these are bad people that want to diss you or get rid of you. They have to spend the money. They have to find new games. And you just have to convince them that you're the right investment or the right game for them. Convince them more than the next person. And of course, if the next person is ex EA or ex Zynga or ex whatever, some famous company, they're much more willing to speak with them than with a no name. Even like Outfit 7, it was a no name for VCs. They didn't care a lot about my experience at Outfit 7. When I would boast about my achievements, like I was there between, I don't know, 500 million installs to 4 billion installs, they were like, wait, installs or revenue? I was like, installs. Oh, we don't care about installs here. We care about revenue. We care about profits, etc. So you have to know what they're after, and you have to give that to them. So you can find someone in every stage of your development, of where you are, but of course, you have to go to the right person at the right time. And how do you pitch to them? We'll go more into that later, but what can you convince them with? And here I made also, let's say, what's better than the next thing. So it's always, they want to avoid risk. All these people want to avoid risks. The publisher, they have 10 games and they want to invest into the one that is most likely to succeed, to make it big, to have that potential. So if you have stats, if you can show them that every day you get 10,000 new followers across your social media, it's much less risky for them to go with you than with someone who maybe has a great game, better looking than yours, done better, works better, less bugs, whatever, but has no social media following, for example, or has bad reviews from famous game portals or whatever. So if you come with stats, or for a mobile game, if you come with how many people decide to buy something in your game and how much money they spend in your game, the VC or the publisher behind it will, if it's a good number, they will likely back you up immediately. If you don't have stats, you don't have them. Sure. You can show them a soft launch game, so a game that's in early access or in soft launch, and they can at least play it and see and start seeing the stats. Sometimes you need a lot of time to get all the stats. You can show them a playable demo. That means they don't have to invest into your game development, because the development is already done. They get the game for free in that sense. They just have to fund you to complete the game. You can show them a pitch, of course, but of course, you have to make a pitch at some point. But honestly, like, no one reads that except like 5 pages maybe of executive summary. So I was there. I went to London with a pitch, and I had my first pitches were 30 pages long. I sent them over email and asked for meetings and blah blah blah. Then when I got the meeting, I came with a new pitch because they never saw anything before what I sent, and it was only 7 pages. And we took a look at the first 3, and that's all they cared about. VCs, for example, and even publishers. Sure, you can tell them how great your game is going to be, but if you can show them any of these other stages of the game here, they're going to appreciate it much more, because they can actually play it. They can see that it's actually done, that it's working, that there's something to it other than a PowerPoint. And of course, a pitch is always better than a general idea or a concept art or whatever you have. And then the very last is the team. And it's not a mistake that the equation symbol is turned the other way, because a publisher or a VC talking to someone that has no relevant experience or comes from a country like Slovenia and not from a big AAA producer or whatever, that team is not relevant for them. But like I mentioned before, if you're ex Rovio and you pair up with someone ex Zynga, and you get another guy from, I don't know, Gram Games or Bethesda or whatever, then you guys make a great team. You're the co-founders, and they will invest in you because of your team, and will just forget about everything else. Or if you're some famous indie developer, you just walk into a publisher's room and you say, I'm going to make a game, I just have a rough idea of it, and they're just going to throw money at you, pretty much. That's so that on one side, that trumps who you are and what you have done in the past, can trump everything else. But if you're nobody like us or like me or like I was, then you got to do all the heavy lifting yourself, and you got to collect money from either doing bootstrapping, which you guys talked about, or family, friends, and maybe some angel investment, or if your richest uncle, basically. Okay, so now we're jumping into each one of them and just going briefly over them. So friends, family, fools, I will not spend a lot of time here. What do they need? They need a happy son or a happy daughter, so they will fund you if they have the money. Some of them may be greedy, and some of them may believe in you because they know you're a great person, but generally avoid. because, like we say in Slovenia, žlahta je strgana plahta. So you may be getting into feuds or problems down the line. Usually there are no contracts signed here. There's just a verbal agreement. Avoid that as well. Try to sign a contract, a convertible loan or whatever. But then you have to explain to them what it is, and they don't get it. And so, yeah. Angel investors. So we already spoke about them. I will show you what a LinkedIn profile of an angel investor looks like. So this is Chris Lee. So Chris Lee, you should know, but to find out why he's so famous, you have to scroll way down to realize that he was VP at Criterion Software and then especially Media Molecule, and they made Little Big Planet, and Sony bought them, and he made a shitload of money. And since then, he started a few other companies, and up from 2011, just an investor into all these companies. And because he was an angel investor into one of these companies, they got like Luna Labs. And I work with these guys, and Hutch, you may also know. They got acquired. No, they raised money. They raised investment from VC funds much more easily, because Chris Lee was behind them. And Chris Lee, he walked the walk. He made the game, and he made a successful game. He sold it. And if he backs you up, then venture capitalists also believe in him and believe in you and give you the money. And if you're familiar with any of these companies here, you see that it goes from just regular mobile games into free to play, and then into software as a service, or services companies for gaming sector, and now lately into Sky Mavis, Animoca, Sandbox, which are blockchain and Web3 games. So they're always on the lookout on the next big thing. And there are a couple of names. So Chris is definitely one of the most famous, at least in London. If he invests in you, then there are 3 VC funds who pretty much always invest into whatever he invested in. So it's pretty much like it says here. Let me make this big. It's pretty much a requirement for seed round or for VC money a lot of times, or if you are that famous person and you don't need the angel. The investment size varies. I would say it's, at least in Europe, it's up to, I don't know, $15,000-$20,000. You can give this to them for free. Like, it doesn't matter that they give you money. It matters that they backed you up. So even $1,000 from Chris Lee is enough, or $5,000 or whatever. That's when I realized that, I literally went to some guy and said, look, the CEO of Miniclip, and said, look, here's $5,000. I will give you $5,000. You just give that back to me, and you have 0.5% of my company, and then I'll raise some money. So that's why these guys are important, and they're good at scouting what's the next big thing as well, and who the good companies are. Then there's venture capital. Again, we have to ask so what do they need? What do they need? Angel investors are just, they don't need much. They want to be active in the games in the industry. Venture capital, like I briefly explained, what do they need? They need to spend all the money that the investors put into their fund, and they have to make sure that 10% of the games they invested into, or 20 or 5, make it big, that they sell to Zynga for $500 million 7 years later. That's all they need. So they need to be on that train. They need to not miss that next big company that's really going to make it big. And they're obliged to sell, well, and to sign contracts to invest in you. They have to do it. It's not like going to your rich uncle who's buying, I don't know, property or whatever, and convincing him to not put money into property, but to put it into your little new company, they have to put this money into games. And if they're not going to put it into your company, they're going to put it into someone else's company. And you have to be better than that someone else. That's all. So they get a lot of offers, obviously, but if they smell from your email, from who you are, from your angel investment that you're any good, then they're happy to talk to you. Things, basic terms that you have to understand when it comes to signing contracts and legalities around here is a term sheet. A term sheet is a short, like a 1, 2, 3 pager, a short a synopsis of what the actual contract is going to look like. So it's just how much they will invest, what percent they will get for that company, what do you have to do in the next 2 years so that we can call this successful. What happens if you mess up? What happens if something else happens, and you knock this out? And also, who else will invest with them? Usually, there's not just one company investing, but if a venture fund invests in you, they also find 2 more venture funds to invest in you at the same time. And one is the lead partner, and the rest are not leading partners. And once the term sheet is approved, then their lawyers and your lawyers make a 30-page contract and write all these things out, and what happens if this happens or if that happens. I read a couple of books on that when I was reading it. You can get them on Amazon. Just get the highest rating books, and you will learn the ins and outs. So important things in this investment contract is so convertible loan. So sometimes, especially for angel investors, you just take whatever money someone is willing to give you, like $50,000, and you write a convertible loan. And as soon as a venture fund comes along and invests in you with a long contract, whatever this $50,000 that was given to you 1 year before this contract was signed automatically gets translated into the share of the company with the same terms of this venture capital. So if venture capital decided that your company is worth $500,000, then the $50,000 that your uncle gave you, for example, is now 10% of the company, for example. That's a convertible loan. So you can stack those up without having a lot of legal paperwork, and it's still friendly to future investments down the road. Milestones are just milestones. So when do you have to achieve what? So you usually get, I don't know, Series A, you get $2 million for 2 years to complete your product, which as concept art or as early playable demo looks good. So now you have to finish it, release it, and iron it out until it's good enough for the market. And then you get another $5 million for marketing budget, for example. And then there's pre and post money valuations. It's also, so at some point you have to decide how much your company is worth. So if someone invests $1 million into your company, does that mean they get half of the company or 10% of the company? And you have to, and sometimes you value the company before the investment happens, so that's pre-money, and sometimes after the investment happens, which is post-money. Anyway, you have to read books about these things. But expectations, like I said, from venture capitalists are you're going to make a big bet. You have experience that someone else doesn't, that you can make it big, and that's all they want. If you're going to say, but we're doing great, we can just do work for hire, or we can be an outsourcing company, they're just going to sell their stock as soon as they can to anyone, because they don't care about that. They don't care about making 5% per year on their investment. They want you to be the next company that Zynga or Microsoft buys or whoever. And then publishers. So I'm guessing this one is the most interesting for you guys. I will touch upon mobile publishing first, which is the one that I have actual experience with, and then we will go into premium. But yeah, what's happening here is much different. So first of all, like in mobile, the games are usually lighter, and they're live games, so you can update them often, and it's expected. So yeah, with mobile publishing these days, it's more or less proof of you need to come with stats, you need to come with KPIs, and if the KPIs are good, the publisher is interested in working with you. I will show a bit of a landscape of the mobile publishing market, and this is a talk I did in 2016, right after we released our game Tinker Island. So there were 3 areas at that point of what the publishers could offer, the mobile games publisher could offer you. So there was a group of companies that was good at PR, a group of publishers that was good at PR. There were a group of companies that were interested in whether you're getting a lot of users, like organically. And then there were a bunch of publishers who were interested in games with very high LTVs, very high revenue per user. So free game and how much people would be spending in it. And these were the companies back in the day. So we had companies like Outfit 7, Fingersoft, Cheetah Mobile, Halfbrick, who were interested in games that they could show to anyone and people would be inclined to play. And so these were kind of simple games. This was before hyper casual. And every now and then one of these guys got a break and one of the games really picked up and millions of people installed it without any real marketing. Then there's this second group, the green group of PR-based publishers. Iopa, Chilingo, Yoda One. These guys, Chilingo, were just these guys were usually ex-journalists. So they worked for some media outlet about games. They switched into publishing, and they would just ask their old friends from other news outlets about games to write articles about the game that they have published. So you would go to them, you would give them the game, and they would get a couple of news outlets to write about you. They would usually have good relationships with Apple and Google, and they may or may not get you featured, and so on. These companies since then have all ceased to exist because this doesn't fly anymore. All of these publishing models ceased to exist since then, more or less, except maybe this one on the right, but with different companies. And this one on the right, the dollar one. So users, these are only interested in users that spend a lot of money in games where users spend a lot of money. And these guys were, you had to have an average player spend 25 cents every day in the game to talk with them. And that meant pretty much just a couple of genres of games where this would work. And outside of these 3 circles, back in 2016, I put Miniclip, Scopely, and Congregate, which were 3 companies that worked a bit differently, and they actually looked at the game and saw potential and tried something different. And we signed with Congregate back in the day, who were not here specifically, but a little bit of both, and also just had a nose for games, and they were willing to try something new. So going with someone in the PR, they're all dead now, but back in the day, if you have nothing else, just go with them. Here, if you have a very awesome game, but this doesn't happen very often, and you don't go to a publisher, and here, through these games, Crossy Roads, Flappy Birds, and Angry Birds came through these kind of companies. Nowadays, so 2022, this is a list of the biggest mobile game publishers these days. So there are way more of them. They're way more profitable. Their business models are way more predictable, because pretty much all of them accept your game only when stats have been proven, which means you've already made a great game. And sure, when you show promise, they also fund your development to some point, but they're less and less willing to take the risk of actually funding, giving you, I don't know, $500,000 for 2 years to finish your game, or to develop it from a prototype to an actual game. And this side of the screen, these are hyper casual publishers. So they're only interested in the hyper casual games, and they expect you to make one game in like 2 weeks. These are different types of publishers. So none of them are hyper casual, and they all have, a bit of a different take on the mobile market, on the games they're looking for. For example, Wargaming is interested only in army-based, especially tanks or planes type of games. Yoda One had some various successes, and they want to work with you if you put in their SDK with social interactions and forums integrated and so on. There's Team 17 with their take on the market, who actually are looking for innovative gameplay, but have not been widely successful on mobile, at least. But they're very good at regular publishing. There's Network, which was a huge company that published one game that made like $500 million a year, but they sold their entire business now to a blockchain gaming outfit. And there are some companies like Devolver or Raw Fury or Square Enix, who work on both mobile and console or premium. Who to work with? I can make suggestions, but it depends entirely on the game. But if you have a game that's well defined or working prototype, you have to research what these guys are working with, what kind of games they have, because they do not usually go outside of their comfort zone. They are focused on, I don't know, idle clickers, or on first-person shooters, army games, RPGs, RTS, whatever. You have to give them what they want, like we showed on one of the earlier slides. They're not gonna go out of their way just for you because you like Team 17 or you like Square Enix and what they did with whoever, some famous IP. Okay. You can find a lot of this information online, of course. Reddit. There are a lot of Redditors who openly share their experiences with these publishers. So you have to do the research yourself. There's a game show in Paris every year, which is focused on Game Connection Paris, which is focused very, very much only on these publishing deals. So it primarily invests publishers on one side and people who have games to show them. Of course, you can discuss this on every show in the world, games show, but this one is especially suited for that kind of stuff. So what else about mobile game publishing? Yeah, so we're as Tricky Trial, we're always, having the option of publishing ourselves with our lack of knowledge of everything we really have to know to do this, with our lack of funds to be able to spend €500,000 in 3 months just to get enough users to see how things actually work. So we're always, whether thinking about working with the publishers versus working with them, so working on our own. So you always have to be on the lookout of what's happening and be open to speak with all these people, and follow where they have successes and which games they're good with and which they aren't. And now the second part, the publishers in the premium space, where my disclaimer, what do I know? I've never done a premium game. But again, they and same with mobile games publisher. This goes for both. There's so first of all, like I said, they have to find these games. They have to get games in their pipeline. That's their job. That's what they get paid to do. Usually you meet a business developer who's a nice guy or a gal, and they're happy to speak with everybody, and they're super excited about everything you do, and their job is to evaluate you as a company very briefly, like, is this even a serious company? Can they actually make a game? They have to see that the genre of the game that you have is matching what they're looking for, and then their job is to get an email from you with a deck, with your pitch, with your presentation, with your, best of all, playable demo, and they give that to a team that doesn't walk around shows, but sits in an office and evaluates game that actually come from those business developers. And their job is to pick the best games. So after you send your game or your pitch to the business developer, it then takes a few weeks for you to get in front of this evaluation team. And evaluation team, whatever they think is good, show it to their boss. And then the boss, if it's really good, shows it further to their boss or whatever. So there's a process that takes time behind here, and you have to wait for this to happen. And the super nice business developer that you spoke with has to give you the news, but it's not this guy who's making the decision. So it's, unless you speak with some high-level exec on a show, you're usually speaking with someone who's just a gatekeeper, who just has to make sure not everyone gets through the door to pitch the games, because the evaluation team will get mad at him, like, why are you sending us all this shit? Send us better games. But it's not his decision at all. He can put in a good word, of course, but it's not, his salary is not depending on the success of the games as much as the evaluation teams. So keep that in mind at all times. Like, what's actually the person you're speaking with, what's his role? If it's a CEO or someone, a decision maker, the conversation is much more, it's tougher, because they're not nice to you. They're used to saying no, and the business developer is used to saying yes, send me everything you do, so he can pick out the best games for his evaluation team. So the publishers in the premium space, from my understanding, they're not like in mobile free to play games. The publisher has to be very good at user acquisition strategy. So they have to be able to spend $100,000 every day profitably on your game, and have the data analytics behind it to make sure you're spending this profitably, you're not losing money, spending it on the right markets, on the right marketing channels, making the right and the best UA videos for your games, and iterating on them all the time. It's usually a team of 20 people working for your game once you go live. These guys, so the premium publishers, they have to build a hype around your game. So once it's live and available on Steam or wherever, people will spend their hard-earned money to buy your game, and they will give you a good score, a good review. That's their job. So these guys, the premium publishers, have to invest money up front without knowing whether it's going to come back or not. They have to build a buzz around it on social media, with news outlets. They have to get the streamers on board, give them early access codes, and give them chests for free. And the streamers have to like your game for all of this to work. So it's a much more it's a riskier model where they don't know the outcome and they don't know very well what's going on until it happens already. With free-to-play games on mobile, you can start small, and once everything is working, you can scale up to that $100 a day or even more. Whereas these guys, they have to decide, okay, today we're going to launch the game, and basically it's finger crossed people are going to buy my game. I've not heard of successful large-scale performance marketing where you actually, show ads on Facebook to get your premium game downloaded for $50. That money is usually better spent on dedicated media where people actually talk about games and are interested in them, and channels and Discord groups where people discuss games. So there are a lot of publishers in premium, probably I'm sure more than in mobile. I've listed a couple. I don't know them, but of course, so there are a couple of Slovenian studios that worked with these, so that's why I listed them here. So yeah, not much to add. However, what you expect from the publishers in the premium space differs a lot than what we at mobile do, what we expect from them. So both of my publishing deals that we've done as a company, we never negotiated, or the amount of money we get up front was never a big deal for us. We knew we had to develop the game. It was almost done. We could further develop it. Whereas premium publishers, so for premium games, usually they fund the completion of your game. So they give you a year to complete your game, and they fund you for like $1 million or $2 million or whatever. You can find data online, recent data as well, what the average deal size is, and that, I don't know, 92% of all deals include development funding for your premium games, etc., etc. To make this a bit more fun and less white text on black, we're going to put black text on white. No, I'm showing just some feedback from publishers that I got. So when we published our first game, Tinker Island, the process was kind of similar to premium publishing. So it was a game without stats, without KPIs. It looked interesting, but at that point in time, publishers didn't really care that much about KPIs, at least many of them. So it was a bit of where you guys, with premium games, could be at this point, right? Your game looks great. Everybody loves it that you show it to. You post something on Twitter, you get a lot of likes. So if you find someone who likes the game, they can publish it and they can give you the funding money. So I'm just sharing some emails of how I got no's, because I reached out to maybe 50 publishers. I spoke with them, I met them, I sent them emails, whatever, and all of them said no. All of them said no, except one. So if they don't want to publish your game, they come up with excuses. So this is usually, you see, there's a space here between T and the edge of the screen because they pasted this from the evaluation team. The evaluation team said no, and they gave a short paragraph of what they don't like. And if it's stuff that's related to the fact that the game is not done yet, which everyone familiar with games knows that the game is not done yet. They can see it and they can imagine that it's going to be done and it's going to be great. If they give you bullshit like, yeah, when I press on this button, nothing happens and stuff like that, or the loop is not complete, yeah, the game is not done. That's why we're looking for a publisher to complete it. So yeah, that's one excuse they sent you. Here, it's a copy paste from the evaluation team or from their old emails saying no, where they even forgot to match the fonts. So here, please excuse the huge delay in our reply because the evaluation team, no one liked it and they didn't give a straight answer for a while. blah blah blah, a complex process involving many stakeholders. It takes us quite some time. That just means that before the final boss said, no to a batch of 30 games, it took like 2 months. Hi Primož, sorry about our very late reply. Late replies usually mean that no one gives a shit. An evaluator can evaluate if a game is any good in a couple of seconds, usually. And they're gonna like it, they fall in love with it the first times they touch it. Here, then you can, for mobile games on iOS, you can send them a special link, and you can do the same. Give them a link, and you can track if someone installed it. And for instance, these guys, I gave them a unique link, and no one installed the game, so no one reviewed it. No one actually saw it. They only looked at, I don't know, texts or my last email and 2 pictures. Sometimes they just follow up and they don't tell you the next steps, which usually means no. If a British person sends you a very long email, it's kind of hard to find out what they want. But if it's a long email and you don't know if it's a straight yes, it's usually a no. Now we're getting closer, right? If they start asking questions, that's a very good sign that they're actually interested in your game. But of course, depends what kind of questions. So these are kind of open questions, like, what are you going to do to improve the game, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't look like someone was looking into the game very much. And when we actually got our game published, it was published by Congregate, and they replied in 9 hours, and this was the winning email. This is what an email looks like from a publisher that actually wants to work with you. So they want to know, what do you expect from Congregate, from the publisher? They want to know about your company. They want to know about tech, to make sure that it works with their tech, with their analytics, with their whatever they have. They want to know where they can actually publish it. Is it also on web, or it's only mobile, or it's only Steam or whatever? Is it Nintendo Switch as well? And if it's not done, they don't ask you, are you going to finish it? But they actually ask you, what are you going to do when is it done? What's in the plan, and what are the stats, and when are you going to finish it? So very, very specific question. And like I said, so I checked my emails and calendar, and I had the call on a Tuesday night, and this email was waiting for me on Wednesday morning. So evaluation team and all that, if they like something, it happens fast, because they always risk losing you as well. You're going to say yes to some other publisher, and they're going to lose out on the deal. So that was my experience. I guess it can also take longer, but if it takes very long, it's obviously not the best sign, unless they have a very messed up process. So what can you expect from publishers, right? We said development funding, marketing budget. So they're gonna spend more money on marketing than you have spent on game development. That's highly likely for premium and mobile titles. They have know-how, especially on how to get the game on the market, how to create the buzz around it. Can they actually help you in game design? Can they make the game better for you? I've had mixed experience. Obviously, they have people who know games, but it's very rare that you find someone who will actually take the time to really get to know your game well enough to make sure whatever they're suggesting is actually fitting into the entire process. So I don't know. Usually not, because they're a publisher, they're not a game developer. And you develop the game, they can help you out. Maybe they can hire some consultants, which usually also doesn't end up well. But That's what you can expect from them. A couple of points on publishers and the legal stuff. So how to reach out. Like I mentioned, I started back in the day with very long pitches, narrowed those down to very short, but at the end I was only sending out demos of our game. I spoke with people, told them about the game, maybe showed some pictures, some screenshots, but always asked them to play the game. If you have a working game, obviously you should do that. You should just send them the working game. So, and how to reach out? Well, it's their job to speak with you, and many of them do. Not all. Depends on the company. Back in the day, I would go out to them, and nowadays they're all very open. So are we to speak. So are we as developers to speak over Zoom. For me, it's not the same. I make a better impression in real life usually. It's much more fun to. You can also chat a little bit and drop some knowledge that you have, drop some names of people you know, drop some games that you know are going around and looking for publishers, and you immediately build some. You get some more points that you know what you're talking about. Let's say the 5 most important points in a publishing contract, from my point of view, are IP ownership. So who actually owns the IP, the game? And that's, in most cases, it's you, and it should be that way. You should own the IP. It should be a big red flag if they want to own your IP, and there should be a good reason for it, and they have to pay a lot of money to own your IP. And they usually don't want to own your IP unless you mess up. If you don't deliver the game, then they get to take your IP. But you really have to mess up in big time for this to happen. And of course, IP of the sequel, that's usually also on the table, that they have the rights to it somehow. But yeah, IP, keep your IP in all cases. And advances, yes, ask for them, especially if you need them. They have them there to give them to you. They're risking a small part of their portfolio. They're a big profitable company, and you guys are, in your garages or whatever, living on a small salary, working your ass off to make this game, putting your entire life into it, and betting your next couple of years. So you're risking way more than they are, and they should really fund you and make sure you're happy and able to develop this stuff. So yeah, they're screwing us over, basically. Even when they take the revenue share, when they take 50%, they risk much less. They risk a few percent of their profits or their revenue, and we risk our lives pretty much. We can't develop 10 games at the same time, so we risked way more, and we should be entitled to more of that profit, but no one's going to give that to you. So revenue share, if it's 50-50 or 70-30 or 80-20 or whatever, sure, it's better if you get more. But my take is, if the cake is bigger, that's the best for you. So make sure you pick the best possible publisher, the one you trust most with, the one that has a proven track history of making games big. And second of all, if they don't get a big revenue share themselves, they also lose a bit of the interest to push your game. So their business is making money out of the games they have. And if they have a deal with a game where they get a 50% cut of every unit sold, or with you where they get a third of every unit sold, they're going to work on the one that's more profitable for them. And if your game is dying, they're going to kill it before they kill if you had a 50% deal, because they're making less and less money. They invest into marketing, but they get less out of it. So that's also something to keep in mind, that both parties have to be happy. And yeah, like I said, they're screwing us over, but at the same time, they're running a business. And if they can make more money some other way, they're going to do it. They're going to do it that way, and it's not going to be you. If you said, okay, I want 70%, it can kick you in the balls later on. Sequels, whenever it comes to sequels, they of course want it, but try to negotiate something that's called a right of first refusal. So that means that you have the right, or it's right of first offer and right of first refusal. So pick it, design the contract in a way where, yes, you have to, in your best efforts, make the best efforts to negotiate a deal for the sequel of your game, but you don't have to automatically accept it, right? I think it's called the right of first refusal, or offer. I forgot. I messed them up. But basically, you are legally obliged to talk with your publisher about publishing the second game, the sequel, but you don't have to say yes to the deal. If you know you can get a better deal somewhere else, you can say no. And if they want to publish your game, they will give you a better deal. If not, you go elsewhere. But you do not automatically get there. You don't automatically have to publish with them. And then when it comes to terms, these are usually in mobile gaming, it's 2 to 3 years. In premium, in console and so on, it's usually 3-4 years is the first initial term. Here, it's it automatically continues unless one party says no. And we developers are usually jerks, and we forget to say that 6 months in advance if we want to cancel the contract. So it's usually 6 months in advance. You have to say, I don't want to continue, and it's fine. But we always forget to do that, and they always get another year or two, even if we want to get out of the deal. So try to structure the deal like that, but then put a calendar notification 6 months before, so you actually decide whether you want to continue or not. And it's not a clickable link. And of course, there are a lot of details in this copy in the contracts. And Raw Fury, one publisher, they published their publishing deals online. So they published what you're gonna get if you work with them. It was Jonas is the managing director. He was in Slovenia for the games show a few years ago as well. So you might know him. So after that show or next year, I'm not sure exactly when, they just gave out the contract so people would start bitching about what these contracts look like. And then there's this dude, Jan William Niemann, who's much more familiar than I am with PC and console publishing, and he basically comments everything that needs to be commented here and why he's commenting it. So when you get to the point of having a contract on your table, put it next to this one and go over all these comments and try to understand why they did this. I didn't do this when we signed the deal. I did give it to a lawyer to take a look, but we didn't have any tie-ins. We didn't have any automatic renewals, etc., etc. It was a very fair deal to my eyes, and that was good. And then the last but not least is self-publishing, where you just put your game on the market on your own. What happens if you put your game on the market on your own without any preparations, without doing anything? Nothing. Maybe your mom downloads it or your friend, but that's it. We did it the first time with this game called Journey Jake. We put it online, nothing happened. A couple of friends downloaded it. Then we started buying users for it and did a lot of stuff, but nothing caught up that much. Second time around, Tinker Island 2, we put it on the market. We got featured by Apple. We got featured by Google a little bit, not huge features, but still, it a couple of 10,000 users over a course of 10 days. But then nothing continues happening on its own, unless you're super lucky or unless you made a great game. So you have to do something for your game to make it, to fly. And the biggest companies in Slovenia are doing self-publishing. It's the hardest. And both of them, Outfit 7 and Chuternion, they all base their initial success on a great game that simply got buzz, that people wanted to download. So Chuternion was huge on 9gag and wherever with their gory clips and GIFs and short clips, right? And Outfit 7 back when iPhone came out was, top free game before marketing even existed on the platform. So, but they managed to build a sustainable business out of both of them. And then the other big publishers in Slovenia are also mostly self-publishing. So Bubadu or us, we're moving more and more into self-publishing. So there was Zootfly who was making money, who was making games for a known publisher from day zero. Basically, the publisher came to them, make this game for us. There's Actalogic who still does this, so they make a game for a publisher on demand, basically. But these were and are much smaller outfits than these two companies here. So the Slovenian market, the Slovenian industry is self-publishing is the biggest chunk of it. So yeah, you need to know everything there is to know. You can get lucky, but then you have to build a business around it. So you get lucky, you get money, you have to hire the right people, you have to make the right decisions of how you're going to maintain your success. And Outfit 7 built a team of 400 people over a course of 10 years. Chuternion is doing it now with the money they earned from Mordhau to make the next hit. Yeah. And now, how to network. This is almost my last slide, or the last one, I think. So I want to share basically some anecdotes or give you some tips on how to network, how to mingle, how to meet people. I think that's still the best way, the best way to reach out to publishers, investors, whoever. After Corona, so I've heard of people who raised money or found publishers purely online, purely remotely, working from their office, home office all the time, never met anyone in person, signed all the papers, etc. You can do it this way. It works these days. Disclosure is that they were X something important, X Gram Games, X whatever, X Voodoo. And I can confirm personally, because I went to London for Pocket Gamer Connect and I went to GDC San Francisco this year, that live meetings are still a thing and they still happen. And I did those back in the day. Zoom didn't work because people weren't used to it. But you gotta come across memorable. And a good friend of mine dresses funny, well, weirdly. That's his style, and everybody remembers him because he's wearing cat prints on his T-shirt, and he's supposed to be a CEO of a next huge company, right? So you have to find something for yourself. What's cool? What I usually did was, like I mentioned briefly before, I shared my experience with. I knew a lot of games and how they performed. So I would usually talk about them and how that studio made it, and that left an impression on people that I actually know my shit. So I would, before I went into a meeting with a company, I would check their games, play them, build an opinion about them, and so on, and then talk about that. You have to be self-critical as well. You're not the best. Your game is not the best. So make a joke about yourself. They don't want to disappoint you. So if you make some self-deprecating jokes or something like that, it's easier for them to talk openly with you Then if you come across as a strong believer in that what you have is absolutely the best and you know all about it and so on. And go outside of your comfort zone. So one anecdote was I sent a pitch to the VC and said, "Can I talk with you?" And he said, "Sure, come tomorrow." I was in Ljubljana and he was in London, and this was on a Friday. So I said, "Oh, sorry, I have some meetings. Can I come in on Tuesday?" He said, "Sure, Tuesday 10 a.m. works." So I bought 10 minutes later, I bought the cheapest ticket from Trieste to London, and I came there for that one meeting without him knowing that I flew across Europe to show him that 5 slides. So he would then later say, "Yeah, let's keep this ball rolling," and which means no. And the other thing I did was I never got invited to an Apple party for their best developers. And it's an invite-only party. And I went there anyway. And everyone thought I was crazy. And when I started typing my name so they would let me in, my name didn't show up. I was like, "Oh, looks like I'm not on the list," which wasn't a lie, but I wasn't, obviously. And they let me in, and I met publishers and developers there, and I could then later drop names. "Oh, I know this guy," or they would open doors for me because I also left a good impression when I was walking around the party. And this is another one of my tips. It works well for me. Ask questions. So don't just tell them about yourself, or tell less about yourself, and just ask about them, what they're doing, what works for them, etc., etc. People like to answer questions. People like to talk about themselves. So if you give them the opportunity to talk about themselves, they think you're cool. They think you're a great person because you made them feel good. And that's, at least in the initial stages of communicating, that's important. So, dodge a question or answer briefly and come back with a question, something they're passionate about. They will talk about it, and you will get all the credit for being cool, even though you didn't say much. Of course, don't avoid not telling anything about yourself, but don't just talk about yourself and pitch. Just ask them, or make them feel good about themselves as well, because that reflects on you. That's what leaves a part of the good first impression. And now we're on to questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Primož. It was quite informative and really down to the details. Now we're up to questions, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them in chat.
All right, Gregor, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can read it out loud, then answer.
After publishing a PC game, does the relationship with the publisher typically continue? Do they tend to stay in touch regarding updates and next games? Or is there very little talk after the release? So, my first disclaimer, I haven't published a PC game, but I think they stay in touch. I mean, it depends heavily on how well your game is doing, but they all want to stick with the winning horse. Does it go further beyond hot fixes and content updates? These discussions, I don't know, but they're involved. They're involved in the game, I'm sure, and they want to publish the next game if you guys, if they're happy with you, for sure. They never want to lose you. We had Congregate asking us to come up with new games to work with them, but since they were going through some restructuring and people were leaving left and right, we decided not to. But they were willing to fund our development, etc., etc. So with PC games, it's similar. I know Triterion, once Mordhau got out, everybody wanted to work with them and continue working with them, and so on. So yeah, hope I answered.
Okay, great, thank you. And
Snake
next,
Lisky, next. What was the biggest challenge with your interaction with the publisher after you signed the deal? First challenge was delivering the game like you promised. That's that's definitely the hardest one. Interactions. So I know there are some publishers who don't work with companies outside of 3 hours from their time zone. So that's definitely a challenge sometime. Well, that's definitely the challenge always, because someone has to, work really weird hours. Maybe, well, I had a family when we did this, and it was sure, a couple of times you're super excited about it, but a meeting every week at some weird hours is not something you look forward to. The problem has also been where the game is headed, especially live game, free to play mobile game, for example, where you make big changes to the game over time. And you have to decide which way this goes. They may be pushing into just put in more ads or do this kind of update, and you want to do something completely different. So there's always discussions here of what's working, and it comes down to the argument or the policy of the publisher. So some are very hands off and they think the best. Some think they know the best, and they make you do what they think is best. What else? And yeah, what's a problem as well is sometimes you expect more attention. You expect their analytics team to dig into the data, come up with their reports. You expect their UA team to make more ads. You expect their UA team to run better marketing. Or in premium publishing cases, you want them to have an article out in some magazine at least once quarterly about your game. But your publishing manager now has three other games, and one of them is new, and there's way more work with that one because it's not even released yet. So sometimes you're fighting for attention as well, and it doesn't feel very good because it's your baby. You promised you'll work on it, you'll keep working on it, you'll make it a great baby, you'll keep it alive, and the publisher is slowly giving you less and less attention because lifetime of the game and making less and less business sense. That has also been a problem. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Question. We have why are you moving towards self-publishing if it's that much harder? Is it just so you don't need to split the revenue, or do you have any other reasons? So let me reiterate the revenue part. Always keep in mind that the cake needs to be bigger. The cake is usually bigger if you're with a publisher, except in rare cases. So no, never. That was never a deal breaker for us, the revenue share. We're mobile only, but never, absolutely never. They do a lot of work for their 50%. They put up $5 million for this hyper casual game that we did, and they weren't sure they were getting it back. They have to have 40 people working on our title through SDK supports, through marketing, analytics, QA, etc., etc., etc. And they cover all of that out of their 50%, not before that. So except marketing costs, everything goes from the same 50% that we get. So no. So why then are we moving to self-publishing? Because in mobile free-to-play games, it's getting boring. Like all publishers are asking you to make clones of other games or to make something very similar or to do exactly what they think is the next big thing. And if you want to do something else, if you want to take a bit of a risk, if you want to invest more than a couple of months into a game, you have to do it yourself. And like I mentioned before, you lose their attention, or you're not sure if they're doing the best job. You think you could be doing better. They have a different strategy now. The CEO has changed. So we go back, and my personal wish has always been that we are like the next Outfit 7, where we have a great game and we run it ourselves, and we know why it's working well, etc., etc. But we made more money through revenue share than our own self-publishing. Way more through that. So it's definitely not revenue share, and we could never get 10 million installs for Tinker Island on our own, and we could never get over 100 million installs for hyper casual game. So we just want to go slow and grow big from there. But maybe it won't work. Like I said, it's super hard.
Thank you for the answer. That's really insightful and detailed. And the next one is,
what are some red and green flags to look for when shopping for a publisher? So in mobile game space, the numbers are pretty public. So definitely check out how big they are. I've reached out to other developers that work with them. If you approach them kindly, even over LinkedIn, they're usually willing to talk, and they share their experience with you. Red flags are definitely any mentions of any late payments or weird payments or calculations that don't add up. That's a huge, if you find anything about that, if you're able to ask anyone around that, that's either an indicator that they're screwing you over, or that they're not doing well financially, and that's the last thing you want. A publisher who's struggling with their own business, because you're gonna land on your ass on the other end, and that's the first thing they need to have money. So red flags, yes, stuff like that. Red flag if you see that there's no one there who actually wants to understand your game or actually is playing it, if they're just number crunchers that are waiting for you to deliver, or just ask you about your project management and never ask you about your game, it's not pleasant to work that way. And contracts, once you get a contract, check out if there's something super weird. We never succeeded with the game, but there was a moment where I was hoping that a game would not make it, because then I would have to work under that contract. If we had a success, we would have to exclusively make games for them for the next 2 years or whatever. And I signed the deal in a way where it was a bit less restrictive for us, but still, if I was hoping the game would not make it, and that's bad. You can't make a game if you don't want it to make it big. And then I realized I don't want to be in that contract. Green flags, yeah, just like I showed you those emails. So that's definitely a good sign if you get a valuable email showing that someone actually looked into it. Any social proof that they're good. If they're letting you or giving you the right people to speak early on, that's always a good sign. Like, here, speak with our game designer, or speak with our product manager, or whatever. Speak with our tech guy. That's always a good sign. But that's maybe not when shopping around. But yeah, like I mentioned in the early slides, look at what they're looking for, look at what you have, and give them what they want. So that's the best green flag for you to match those two things. If you're just desperately willing to work with anybody, it's probably not the best match, because they're looking for something. Each one is looking for something different. So there may be only three or four best publishers to work with. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Yeah, we have one more.
Cool. All right. Did the mini clip guy take the 5,000 to invest? Did that work? He found it very funny. He's still a good friend of mine, and we hug when we see each other. Did he invest? No. But it's not. So for these guys, it's not the money. It's not the 5,000, 10,000. It's really, they live in London. They are on a C-level salary. It's really proof that you've convinced them to give you a little bit of their money. It's not like they're not going to have money to put food on their table. It's really just they like you, they put the $5,000 behind it, and whenever another VC is going to call them, they're going to tell them, yeah, Primož is a great guy, he's really onto something. And that's all the VCs need to hear. C-level guy with 15 years experience telling them that they're making the right choice investing in you. Would it work if I actually pushed through? I think so, yeah. But we had a publishing deal signed by then.
Okay, perfect. And the next one is this one.
What happens if you miss a publisher's deadline or you don't deliver as agreed on time? What are the potential consequences? So, in all the experience I've heard is that this pretty much happens all the time. I've never heard of any super bad stuff happening around this, unless it's a first-party studio. So for a third-party studio, it's usually not the biggest budget they have, so they just let you extend the budget. Sometimes they step in. Sometimes they have dedicated teams to step in. There was a publisher from Germany who had a team called Tiger Team. So they would just jump into your game and put in all the SDKs and make sure the game wasn't crashing. So they want to release the game. Usually, if things go very south, they can take the game from you and finish it on their own, even take IP ownership over it if you've really been bad and missed all the deadlines. I'm sure sometimes people just take the money and spend it on hookers and booze and whatever, but usually you're aligned and on the same page. And all the crunches and all the bad stuff, they give that to the first party studio, so the studios they own if it's a big publisher like EA. And they really have to deliver on time, and they have to work long hours, and they get shit for it, and they deliver a half-assed product. But it's the big title that they have to have this year. Otherwise, the stock will drop. You're usually a smaller player, and usually they're friendly. Worst case, they take your game and maybe cancel the contract, but keep your game. But you can make sure in the contract that they can't do that. Usually they still give you the rev share, or maybe a bit less if they do the game instead of you. I've heard that in mobile space. So you didn't have someone who could make shaders and all the art look good enough. So they did it for you, and they took 60% instead of 50 or something like that. Okay, that's it.
Thank
for
you.
My answer for this.
And the next question is,
okay, how often did you need to report to Congregate, for example? What is that like? So with Congregate, we set up weekly calls at 9 p.m. every Thursday, I think. And then after a few years, we moved them to every 2 weeks. However, all of them, or at least in mobile games, all these publishers have, which is what they need to be good at, have good analytics. So in terms of getting data on how your game is doing, it's pretty much real time. They just give you access to a dashboard, and you can see the financial data and the retention numbers and all those reports. In terms of us reporting what we're doing, well, it was similar to the previous question. They want you to be a good partner to work on the game. So yeah, at the beginning, maybe they push you a bit to update the game to fix the critical issues, not just technical, but also in game design, development, UX, economy, and so on. And there they pushed us, and we basically took the entire team off of all the other projects and had them all work on Tinker Island until we got to the top of the curve in users and revenue. And then when that started falling down, we moved people back to other future projects. They're mostly interested in when are you going to deliver what. and deadlines. So you usually have a call with your publishing manager, who's part analyst, part project manager, and you discuss what's best for your game, when are you going to do it, and then you check data, what's happening, and you ask them, please push our game more, and they tell you, please make better updates. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now we don't have any questions left, but we'll still take a few of them if anybody has.
Yeah, sure.
And in between, I'll ask like just two simple questions. Now that the COVID is almost like over, like which like conference like would you like recommend? Like they're like the, let's say, like must be, or like let's say must be category, or like best budget, or how to say, like that you can meet and like meet a lot of like publishers and like a
Yeah,
lot of like
yeah.
network.
So I'm mostly familiar with mobile, and the hyper casual space is super saturated. So you don't need to go anywhere to work with anyone, and you're just gonna upload a game, and automatically it's gonna get released, and you're gonna get 1,000 users into it, and you're gonna get the stats. If the stats are good, they're gonna call you, and you're gonna continue. You can actually, do it without speaking to anyone. But if you have a great game, they're gonna immediately come back and work with you. If you want to work in mobile with a publisher on a more serious game, so I would suggest any show that most of these mobile publishers are going, and I've been doing PGC London for this one. So that's every January. This year it was February in London. It's a 2-day show, and it has a very good system of making meetings. I haven't been to Game Connection Europe, which happens in Paris. It's happening in this year as well. I see. Looks like in the fall someday. So September. It was usually in November. Oh yeah, here it is. So this one is very specific to publishing and distribution. So also distributing your game on Huawei App Store or Samsung App Store. I've never done this one, but I've heard that it's a good one. I have also done GDC Cologne, so the European Gamescom. One day before the public event starts, there's a business-only event. So, but it's a very big show because it's also open to the public. So very huge area that it covers, and it's a bit hard to run into people there. In London, you actually run into people that you want to then later talk. There, you have to have all the meetings set up beforehand. But it's very safe to assume that whoever you want to meet, at least in Europe, is going to be there. Is going to be at the Gamescom. They usually go. So it's best if you're there. They'll probably take the meeting with you. And for outside of Europe, I've done only GDC San Francisco, which is huge, very big. I've never bought a ticket to actually go inside because all the meetings happen in the hotels around the show, especially for mobile games, or I think for all of them actually. So again, you have to know who's there, and you have to set up a meeting beforehand. But every company is represented there. So these are the ones. But yeah, if you're on a tight budget, you should be able to speak with them through Zoom. To make their lives easier, you should use a tool like Calendly and have them make it very easy for them to get in touch with you. So send them an email that you want to talk, give them the Calendly link, so they don't have to ask you, do you have time at that and that time, and then come back and double check and check with some other colleague. Here, they just click and they have a meeting set up with you. So it's much less, takes them less time Otherwise, it would take them 30 minutes to set up a call with you that lasts 30 minutes. Now it's just one click and the call is happening in 3 days. Yeah, and their White Knights Europe is also good, especially for the Eastern Bloc, but that usually happened in Ukraine or Belarus or Russia. So I'm not sure what's happening with that right now.
Okay, thank you. And now we have like 2 more questions.
Okay, Chinese publishing deals. What happened there? So China is a bit of a different beast when it comes to publishing. First of all, there's a 1 to 2 year long process if you want to publish a game that costs money or that has in-app purchases. So that used to last 6 months, but now it lasts up to 2 years. And you have to be a Chinese company to get all the paperwork. Basically, the Ministry of Morality and Radio Communications have to give you a sign-off. The way pretty much all Chinese companies work is you publish a game somewhere and they like it and they give you a minimum guarantee, let's say $50,000. They give you $50,000 today, and then they translate. You give them all the code. They translate the game for them. They translate the game for you. They put in all the Chinese SDKs and the Chinese face recognition systems and SMS verifications and kids time tracking systems because they can't play games more than 4 hours a day or whatever. So all this shit has to be put in. That's why you only take the money and you let them deal with everything else. But then at the end, they still have to publish the game and it still has to work. And in our case, we did all that. We didn't get 50K, we got 100K. So 50 now, 50 later. We knew the game would not work very well because it was like 4 years since the game was published in China. And we asked them, can we make the game better? We know this and this is wrong. We can't fix it on the live game because it messes everything up. In China, we start from scratch and we make these small changes. They would say, yeah, super guys. You guys are awesome. We should do this. And then we made all those changes. It was like half a year of work. And they just released, or some other company released something that was a bit different than like a huge game, like, I don't know, Fallout Shelter or something. And the Chinese community was super mad because it was a bit different than the Western version. So they said, no, guys, bring back the original Tinker Island. Don't do any changes. So we threw away 6 months of our work, which was the 100K we got. So we spent it all on that. And then the game, they got like a small Apple feature. They never worked with a free-to-play mobile game before. They didn't have UA managers. They didn't do performance marketing. So the game just died. And after 6 months after it was live, after 1 year and a half of waiting for the license, they killed it. And we luckily got at least the $100K out of it, but we should have never spent more than the bare minimum amount of development time on it. And if we ever go around that again, we just negotiate, get as much minimum guarantee as you can, make sure you don't have to do anything, and let them handle all the shit, and hopefully you get some money 2 years later.
Okay. Thank you very much. And the next question is...
So, hey Primož, long time no talk. Okay, are my friends from France. How would you approach talking about an advance with a mobile games publisher? In our experience, it seems it's like it is almost impossible to convince them. Yep. So if we go back to our slide, what's better than the next thing? This is especially valid in the mobile space. So Rock, if you can bring my screen back, this one. Where's this? So you're coming with them with, playable demo. You're saying it's a great game, and they see it's almost done, or it's it looks like it's done or whatever, and you say, yeah, but we have to make, I don't know, 1,000 more assets for it, or I don't know. And they're like, yeah, just, why can't you give us the stats? If you give us the stats, we know we can make money on it. And if we can make money on it, we can maybe give you some money as well. But we got advance payments in both cases. They were small, like from Congregate it was maybe $20,000, and in the other case it was a bit more. I don't think I can share, but with Congregate we got the money after we signed the deal, so they were on board, and we promised we would launch in 4 months. We did in 6. So it wasn't, they weren't taking a big risk. And back in the day, KPIs were not that important. They knew they would release the game would be featured by Apple, they're going to make the money back, and if something else happens, like if the game goes big, super. If not, they're going to make their money back. That's why they had the policy of giving this money to developers. We were lucky that we didn't need the money, although at the end of the day, since we were late and we actually ran out of money, it was very helpful. In case of the hyper casual stories, right, you have the KPIs. Once the KPIs are good enough, it's like a 95% chance that the game is going to make money for the publisher. So yes, they will give you the money. And it's same with a bigger game, right? That's why I was spending a lot of time on VCs at the beginning. So it's maybe better to go to a VC and tell them that you have a great game that's not finished, but you have this and this stats or whatever, and ask them to invest. Because the publishers in the mobile space get so many offers from live games with proven stats that they're less and less willing to take the risk of, paying you to make a game that doesn't have as good stats as the guy next to you. So that's why I think it's a problem of them taking the risk, and investors are more likely to take the risk, I think. But it again depends on other things, like, do you have Chris Lee investing in you?
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess one last question from me, and we're gonna wait a little bit more, and then gonna slowly finish this lecture. Do you have any tips about pitch decks, or like what to put in them, and like what the publisher expect from them, and something like that?
I was thinking about this, and my experience is keep it as short as possible, only show videos. I don't know. So we haven't done a pitch deck in a while. So it's very important, first of all, what you're pitching and to who, and not just which company. Are you just trying to speak with someone who will take a look at your game, like a game designer who will actually look into the deep roots of your game and how everything is, the core loop is connected with metagame and whatnot? Or do you just have to give the materials to the business developer to convince his boss that you're worth speaking to, right? And if it's the latter case of this biz dev that needs, a good deck to show his boss, then you need to make that good deck for him. It has to be sexy, it has to be short, it has to have references to successful games, or you show good KPIs or whatever. And it has to be polished. But then when you speak with someone who's actually analyzing your game and game mechanics and whatnot, if that ever happens, you can actually go deeper and tell him about all the great stuff that your game actually has that the execs don't care about. Because the execs care about, is it popular? Do you have social media? Do you have KPIs? Someone who has to make the game, I don't know, increase retention, day 7 retention. Now that guy who's responsible for that at the publisher is going to want a completely different pitch deck. So I intentionally started pitching, sending my decks to the publishers I did not want to work with, like the worst ones, those ones on the top of the screen, like PR bullshit, whatever. So I would send them, follow up, see what they have to say, see if they even read it. And the longer I was doing this, the longer it took to, the shorter my pitch got. And to Congregate, the publisher I did get at the end, I was lucky enough somehow at some Slovenian game dev event to meet Andraž Bole, and I took him out for a beer. That's also a tip I forgot. If you want to speak with anyone in Slovenia, at least, just ask them to come to a burger nearest to where they live and ask them shit, and they will tell you, usually. I like burgers as well, so. So I actually got introduced to Congregate, and I never sent them the pitch. I shared screen on the first call. I sent the test flight link, so the build afterwards. And nine hours later, I got the email I showed you. So it was, the execs didn't care about pitch. They cared about me. They cared about the fact that Andraž made the introduction. They liked this Andraž guy, they knew him from before. I left a good impression. I had all the answers they needed during the call, and they followed up with the next. And then like three weeks later, we signed the contract after back and forths. So pitches, at least in mobile space, don't hyper casual, no pitches at all, like, or maybe 4 slides with screenshots from things you're going to clone. So, but for premium mobile game, for premium console or PC, I honestly don't know. But I'm sure that if you come with one GIF on 9gag with I don't know how many likes, it's worth more than a polished, perfect pitch.
Okay, perfect. And I think with this, we're going to conclude this lecture. And just before we go, this was the last lecture. There's not going to be the lecture next week, but there's going to be a final event on 14th of July in Elektronički muzej at 17:30. And you're all invited. There's going to be like all of the mentors, partners, sponsors, and also other participants, and also the local game dev community. So be sure to check it out. And we're going to see you all in 14 days. And again, thank you, Primož, for all of the insights and all of the like answers and all of like the in detail anecdotes and so on. And yeah, see you in 14 days.
Thanks, Rok, for having me. You guys, enjoy your day. What about homework? Is that over?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, the homework. Yeah, you can, I guess, share the screen or almost forgot
Sorry,
about
guys.
that.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
So I think so if you guys wanna pitch to publish, I think this is the best approach. So do your own research. Well, first internally decide what you actually want. Do you want someone to fund you? Do you want someone to invest in you? Do you want someone to publish you? Do you want money for completing the game, etc.? Figure out what you want. First step. Second step, figure out what you have to show. What can you show? What are you showing? Are you showing a game? Are you showing a prototype? Are you showing a completed game? And then figure out who specifically you want to pitch this to. Maybe one company, one publisher, one investor, or maybe 3, but not everybody on my list from before. So that's the homework, to figure out what you have, what you want, who you think is the best partner, and why they are the best partner, why they should consider working with you and giving you what you want. So that's the homework. In essence, it's 4 sentences, maybe. It's not a pitch deck. I don't think you should do this at this stage. And yeah, write that down, write why you think this is the best path for you, and I will take a look if you want me to, and share what I can. I can share a bunch of stuff on the publishers I know in the mobile space, and much less on premium and who's the best for you, because I just don't know them. And yeah, I'll come back with that and give you my opinion, or tell you who else I think is suitable for you, or what you should be doing differently, showing differently, asking for different stuff. So that's the homework.
Thank you, Primož, and thank you for reminding me. And I think this is also going to be also really good exercise for all of the participants, that which they will show at the end, like some kind of why, like for the dream project and so on. So thank you again, and yeah, see you all in 14 days. Ciao.